My name is Lucy Jane Santos and I'm the author of Half-Lives, The Unlikely History of Radium, to be published by Icon in July 2020. I am repeatedly asked why I got so interested in radium, not to mention how. And whilst I can't exactly remember the first time I became aware of the subject, I can remember the first time I ever held some in my hand. It came in a large box of, for want of a better word, stuff from an auction house, bought on the spur of the moment, sight unseen, a treasure trove of items from a house clearance somewhere. The possessions of a woman who was obviously interested in how she looked and took great care with her appearance. Amongst all the half-used cosmetic pots and tubes was an intriguing small cardboard box, which, when opened, was stuffed full of French newspapers. And I carefully rummaged, removing the newspapers, and revealed a pot of face powder of a brand I'd never heard of before. And as I removed the lid of the pot, I excitedly noted that the paper protecting the content from spilling was still intact. It had never been used. That was short-lived, because soon after I got a lungful of sweet-smelling powder as I'd accidentally put my finger straight through the top. Yes, I am that clumsy. And that's my origin story, because as it turns out, the makeup was the French brand Radium, which was certified to contain both radium and thorium, and I had just inhaled radioactive dust. I now live a life of fighting crime using my acquired superpowers. Only joking. I spend my time researching and writing about radium. Because, slight health scare aside, and don't worry, it wasn't really radioactive, the pot of radium powder made me think about who used these products and what results did they promise. That little pot, this little pot in fact, brought out the archaeologist in me, and I trained as an ancient Egyptian archaeologist before moving on to 20th century history, but I've always loved holding objects and thinking about the people who they belonged to and the stories they could tell. And over the last few years, I've set about uncovering radium's secret and surprising histories. And Half-Lives reveals the fake doctor who promised a cure in a bottle, the spa towns of Bath and Buxton who offered radium water on tap, radium chocolates, breads and meats, and of course radium toiletries, powders and lipsticks. I've spent days scouring antique shops, car boot sales and flea markets in Britain, France and Belgium to build up a collection, and photographs of these objects will illustrate this book. I've drunk radium water up the top of a mountain in Austria, had a very embarrassing mix-up about the etiquette of nude bathing at a radon bath in the Czech Republic, and I've travelled to New York, Paris, the spa towns of Britain, speaking to historians of theatre, music, fashion and medicines to build up this previously undertold story of the consumer uses of radium. And it is these stories, these micro-histories, that I am the perfect person to tell. I love the history of science. In fact, I've been the Executive Secretary for the British Society for the History of Science for over 10 years. But I also love the history of the everyday, the history of the products that our grandparents used and that lined the shelves in places such as Boots the Chemist, Harrods and Selfridges, all of which stocked my radioactive products. Don't get me wrong, I love the stories of the great and the good of radium history, the Curies, William Ramsay, Ernest Rutherford and Frederick Soddy. They are of course part of the story I tell. But Half-Lives also reveals the tale of radium and radioactive rays through the lens of those who are deemed quacks, or those considered merely gullible. And it's through their stories that a new history of radium is revealed, one situated at the ever-evolving interface of medicine and science. Within these stories are a host of fascinating characters who helped shape public discourse at the time and our understanding of radium and radioactivity today. So to augment that roster, I will add, amongst many, many others, Helen Cavendish, the Mayfair Society beauty salon owner who launched Radium Hair Restorer just over 100 years ago, and Lester Gardner, whose glow-in-the-dark special effects stunned theatres, audiences in Broadway and London's West End. Were they quacks, gullible fools, or something else entirely? I'm really looking forward to sharing their stories with you.